and welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On today's show, we're going to take a close look at jealousy and envy and that sting of insecurity that can come up in relationships, especially when our partners' online interactions make us pause for a moment. Somebody had reached out and asked me this really powerful question about this subject. I've been kind of answering it in my AMAs. I've actually even done a writing on it. But I really think what's going on here is this is opening a door to a conversation that so many of us are quietly wrestling with. Jealousy and envy are these things that show up inside of us, and then we're kind of lost on what to do. So today we're going to explore all that. But before we dive in, as always, I want to take a moment to say thank you to my longtime listeners and to welcome those of you who are new here. If you're enjoying these conversations, please remember to like, subscribe, or even follow the show. And if you're listening on Spotify, it really does help if you rate the show 5 stars because that makes it easier for others to find these topics and join the conversation. Also, in my show's description, you will find a donation link for anyone who wants to support the work that I do and help these episodes keep going. All right, so let's set the stage here. We live in a world where a simple like on a photo or love can carry a lot of weight. It can stir up a feeling of competition, doubt, or fear that we're losing ground with the person we love. And it can also push us into comparisons we never asked for, measuring ourselves against a stranger on screen. And this isn't just about kink or DS relationships, it's quite universal. No matter who you are, the digital age has made attention feel more public, more fragmented, and sometimes more threatening. So today we're going to untangle all of this. We're going to look at jealousy, we're going to look at envy, and how to tell the difference. And we're going to talk about why this matters, and then what to do when those pangs kind of strike. And I'm going to bring into this how this affects us in the kink and dynamic DS spaces as well, because these feelings don't just vanish when power dynamics are part of the relationship. All right, first, let's talk about the emotional sting. Let's get real about what this actually feels like. Now, you're scrolling, maybe you're half distracted, and then you see it. Your partner has liked a photo, or maybe they've left a comment on something, or maybe they're just following somebody new. And it's not just anyone, but someone who stirs something sharp inside of you. They've got a body you wish you had, or the confidence you never felt, or maybe you just think that whatever they're emulating, you can't pull off, right? Or maybe they're really articulate with the way they talk, or they feel overly confident. They're showing up in a way that cuts right to one of your sore spots. In that instant, your body reacts before your mind even has time to catch up. Your stomach tightens, your chest might feel heavy. Maybe your jaw even clenches or your breathing changes without you noticing. Then those thoughts start firing. Why did they like that picture? What's this absolutely mean? Are they bored with me? Are they comparing me to this other person? And the worst part about all of this is how fast it begins to spiral. Now, in the space of a few seconds, you've gone from casual scrolling to mentally rewriting the story of your relationship. And that's the sting right there. It's not just a thought, it's a surge. Psychologically, this has a pretty simple explanation. Your brain is wired to detect threats on what matters to you, matters to you most. Your bonds, your stability, your sense of safety. Now, in today's world, that wiring hasn't updated for social media. It can't distinguish between a lion crouched in the grass and a partner double tapping a photo. Both get tagged as threats, and your nervous system here reacts. And this is important to say out loud. It's not a weakness. It's not you being broken. It's human wiring. Now, every one of us has insecurities. Every one of us can get snagged on something small when it touches a tender spot. And if you've ever been told, you're too sensitive for feeling that jolt, ignore that. Sensitivity means your nervous system is paying attention. And the real work is not pretending you don't feel it, but in learning what to do once it shows up. So let me put this another way. I want you to think of jealousy or even that insecurity as a smoke alarm. Now, when that goes off, It doesn't always mean that the house is burning down. Sometimes it just means, hey, that toast was left too long in the toaster and it's smoking, but the alarm still screams anyway because its job is to protect you. And that's exactly what your body's doing here. It's going off at full volume, even, if the actual danger is small, even if your partner's like is just that, a like and nothing more. The tricky part is how quickly we start stacking meaning onto that feeling, right? Now, the knot in your stomach becomes a story. You start telling yourself, I'm not enough. They don't want me. I'm being replaced. That's not your body talking anymore. That's your old wiring. Those past moments of rejection, criticism, or even being overlooked are sliding into the present. And sometimes we might even be projecting them forward. And if you don't notice that shift, you're going to believe the story as if it's a fact. Now, this is where the psychology can help slow this down. The body's surge is your amygdala, that part of your brain that runs threat detection. Now, that fires off before your rational mind can weigh in. That's why it feels so instant and absolutely so consuming. Now, your prefrontal cortex, the rational part where we think, is a lot slower. Now, that comes online later, which means the first job when the sting hits isn't to analyze it to death, it's to recognize what's happening to your body, right? So take a moment, take a breath, ground yourself, and remind yourself this is a reaction, not a verdict. We can't eliminate the sting. Anyone who says they've never feel this is, lying or even numbing. But we can do is start to learn how to catch these signs sooner, give it a name, and stop it from writing the whole script for us. The truth is, everyone experiences this. Straight couples, queer couples, monogamous, non monogamous, kink, vanilla, it doesn't really absolutely matter. Insecurity is universal. The only difference is whether we deny it or we face it. And here's the key: once you normalize it, once you can say to yourself, of course I feel this and I'm human, you take back some of the control instead of spiraling into shame, right? Especially that old, those lines, I shouldn't be feeling this. You can start asking better question. What exactly is the sting pointing to? Is it a fear of loss, or is it a fear of comparison, or something else? And that's where we're going to head into next. But right here in this moment, the most important step is to recognize the sting for what it is: your body's alarm system, not a judgment on your worth. Now, I know I've been answering AMAs and I've done the writing on jealousy and envy, but I really want to get into a little bit more of an expansion on it here. So let's pull these feelings apart because this is where most people get tangled. Now, jealousy and envy get used like they're the same thing, but they're not. They are different animals, and if you don't know how to sort them, you're going to end up trying to fix the wrong problem. Now, first, jealousy is about fear of loss, right? It shows up when something you already have in your life feels threatened, right? It's the knot in your gut when your partner spends more time with someone else and you worry that you're being replaced. It's that whole sharp edge, that cuts in your when your best friend, clicks with a new person and you fear you're going to lose that spot. At its core, jealousy is protective. It's your mind trying to guard you on what matters most. Now, envy is different. Now, envy is about wanting something you don't have. It's looking at someone else and thinking, why them and not me? It's watching your coworker walk into the room with confidence while you feel maybe invisible, right? It's seeing a friend traveling while you're stuck at home and then it aches a little bit in your chest. Envy isn't about loss, it's about longing. Now, let's even make this more clear with some examples. Say your partner is laughing with someone new at a party. If what spikes in you is, are they going to like this person more than me? Am I about to lose my place? That's jealousy. But if the spike is, this person's so charming, everyone wants to be them, I wish I could be like that, that's envy. Same moment, totally two different inner reactions. And I don't know, it was about 15 years ago. I remember this happening when I was actually dating someone and we were at an event, and it was a person I had met that was I quite respected, that They were already in the field of psychology. And I just, wanted to kind of pay my respects on something they had written, that I had wrote, and how it influenced me. And I wanted to say thank you. But in that moment, the person that I was there with got very upset. And that's when they had to, they were learning the difference of what it was. It was a combination of jealousy and envy, right? But I don't want to digress too much. Why does all of this matter? Because each one of these calls for a different response. Jealousy is asking for reassurance, stability, connection, right? It says check in with your bond, make sure you're good, the ground underneath you is steady. Envy is asking for self reflection. It says, look at what you want in your own life, right? Where do you feel maybe it's lacking, and how can you start working towards that? Now, if you treat envy like jealousy, you're going to keep trying to get reassurance from your partner when what you really need to face is your own hunger. And if you treat jealousy like envy, you'll keep trying to quote unquote fix yourself when the real issue is that you need to have a conversation about security in the relationship. And if you get the label wrong, you end up chasing the wrong fix every time. Now, there's plenty of research to back all of this up. It shows that jealousy is tied to attachment systems. It's rooted in the fear of abandonment, the fear that the bond that you depend on might be slipping away, right? Envy, on the other hand, is more tied to self concept and social comparison. It's how we see ourselves stacked against other people. Different parts of psychology are firing in each case, which is why one conversation with your partner might soothe jealousy, but that's going to do absolutely nothing for envy. And one pep talk about self worth might help your envy side, but that's going to do nothing for the jealousy side. Now, it gets especially messy when both show up at once. And sometimes they often do. Now, let's go back to this party scene here for a minute. So your partner's clicking with somebody new. Jealousy says, I'm going to lose that person. I'm going to lose my partner. And envy is also saying to you, I wish I had that charisma, that spark, that attention. So now you're caught between the fear of loss and the hunger for what you don't have. And it feels like a storm inside of you. That's why it sometimes feels impossible to pin down what's exactly wrong. You're actually fighting on two different fronts at once. And here's the danger with that. When jealousy and envy mix, they feed off of each other. The fear of loss pushes you to cling tighter. And then envy pushes you to criticize yourself harder. Suddenly, you're both panicked about your partner leaving and ashamed that you're not good enough. And that's really a brutal place to be. It's often where people start acting out. They're checking phones, they're picking fights, they're withdrawing. They're even reshaping themselves into what they think their partner wants. Now, none of that actually helps because it's all built on confusion about what we're actually feeling. So let me ground this with something simple. When you feel that sting, pause for a moment and ask one straightforward question. Am I scared of losing what I already have, or am I aching for something I don't? Now, that question alone can't stop the spiral, and it doesn't solve everything, but it does point you in the right direction. If it's jealousy, the path forward is usually about communication and reassurance, naming your fear, asking for clarity, and remembering that jealousy is the alarm system trying to guard the bond. If it's envy, the path is more personal. It's about naming what you want, owning that desire, and taking the steps, big or small here, toward it. And this is where I see so many people in therapy go wrong. They say, I'm jealous of my friend's success. No, that's envy. You don't fear losing your friend. You want them, you want what they have. Or they're going to say, I get told sometimes, I envy my partner flirting, when what you really mean is, I'm terrified I'll lose them. Mislabeling the feeling, and you know what? Next thing is you misdiagnose the problem. And again, none of this means you're weak or you're failing. These feelings are built into us. They're part of being human. And the work here isn't to erase them, but to know what they're telling you. All of our feelings are signals. Jealousy signals that a threat to your bond. Envy signals a gap in your own life. if you can name them right, they stop running your show. They stop driving the car. If you name them wrong, you're going to stay in that spiral spinning, and you're going to head in a direction not being led where you want to go, but where they want to take you. So the next time that sting hits, whether it's from social media, like, a partner's laugh at our party, or someone, seeing someone who shines in a way you wish you could, just stop for a moment. Ask that question: fear of loss or hunger for what's not mine? Once you know, once you even allow yourself to ask this question, the path moving forward is going to become a little bit clearer. Now, let's talk about exclusive relationships, especially when we are looking at the public space, right? When we talk about exclusivity in relationships, most people imagine something simple. You're my person, I'm yours. We don't step outside of that, period, right? Now, that sounds straightforward, but in today's world, exclusivity isn't just about sex or dating or even physical presence. It's being played out on screens, in public spaces where attention can scatter with a single click. And here's the paradox with all of this: exclusivity is about reassurance. It's about being chosen. We want to know that out of all the people in the world, our partner is choosing us again and again. And that's what makes us feel safe. But digital platforms are designed to do the opposite. They're built to fragment attention, to make us aware of all of the options, all of the comparisons, all the ways we can measure ourselves against everyone else. And honestly, the very thing we crave, the security in being chosen, gets tested by the constant flood of reminders that our partner could choose differently at any moment. Now, from the partner's perspective, a like or a follow is often meaningless. It's a second of scrolling. Maybe it's just a quick reaction. The videos of, somebody playing with a puppy and we just happen to like it, whatever the case may be. Sometimes we're not even really checked in on what we're doing. We're just kind of scrolling and liking because that's kind of the era we're in, right? We're digitally connected but disconnected at the same time, right? Now, they might not even remember 10 minutes later something they liked or clicked or loved or followed, right? But for the person on the receiving end, especially if it touches an insecurity, that small action carries a lot of weight. It feels like a crack in the wall of exclusivity, and suddenly you're my person feels less certain because, you know what? Here's the proof of their attention wandering, even if just for a moment. And I think there's a lot of us that have experienced that, right? Our mind starts racing 10 steps ahead. What we're talking about here is learning to slow things down. Now, that gap between action means to the person doing it and what it means to the person seeing it is where the pain lives. And unless we acknowledge it, couples get caught up in a cycle. One partner says it's just alike, it doesn't mean anything. And the other person is saying it does mean something because it hurt me, right? Both are telling the truth from their side, but they're talking past each other. And this is something I see in therapy quite often. What people tend not to understand is both persons, both people inside of their relationship, their views on reality can both be truthful. It can hurt and it can just be alike and nothing more. But let me frame this in psychological terms. Human beings are wired for what we call social comparison. We constantly measure ourselves against others to figure out where we stand. Now, in real life, that used to mean your town or your workplace, maybe even your extended family. Now, thanks to social media, the proof of comparison is infinite. You're not just comparing yourself to a few people, you're comparing yourself to a curated stream of the most attractive, charismatic, successful faces from around the world. And that's a brutal arena for anyone's self worth. I remember seeing comedians that I wish I was, for me, to me, they just make me laugh every time I listen to their routines. And I wish I could be that funny, right? So I'm envious of their ability to make others laugh. Or I see some people who are just traveling constantly. Um, I get jealous of the places they go, right? It's not because I know I will never get there. It's just, right? We're looking at these things, that what they're doing, what we're not doing, right? So when exclusivity here is played out in all of this public space, it's not just about, are you mine? It's also about, am I enough in the sea of constant competition? Now that's what makes this simple like sting so sharp, right? It really just hits us hard. It's not only jealousy, it's the fear of losing what you have, right? So it's also the, we got to look at, and envy comes in, the ache of not measuring up to someone else your partner is glanced at. And it's the double hit, that we've talked about before. Now, here's the thing: exclusivity doesn't have to mean never looking at anyone else. That's absolutely unrealistic because attraction does happen, curiosity happens. What exclusivity really means is commitment. It's the steady choice of each other day after day in the face of distractions. But because that choice is tested more visibly in the digital age, couples have to talk about, all of it in the ways that the older generations never had to. Look, I'm 51. I never had to have these conversations 30 years ago because it just didn't happen. Maybe in my, who is the better social group in high school or maybe at my university, but we weren't doing social media then, right? I barely remember when MySpace came on, and then after that it was Facebook, and then it kind of really ramped up, right? Now, one of the most powerful things a couple can do is name the gap. Say it out loud. When you like a photo, it doesn't mean much to you, but to me it hits hard. Now, that's not an accusation, that's information we're letting our partner know. It helps your partner understand the weight that you're carrying. For the partner hearing it, the challenge is not to get defensive, but to recognize that a small action has larger effects. Now, that doesn't mean you have to stop liking photos. Then you have to start discussing ways of how you can still explore what you like without one person not trying to recoil everything they do. And then the other person, then on the other side of that, anything you might do affects them, right? Because otherwise, then we're going to shrink inside of a relationship. Now, I don't want people to start getting in, like, and this is what I'm saying here, I don't want you to get into policing your moves. No relationship can survive constant surveillance. The real work here is building trust solid enough that it stays, you know, alike instead of being read as a betrayal. That's what we have to look at. Oh, my partner likes something on social media. They like some post of a photo, right? Or they like something that somebody was talking about. We just have to see, we have to learn to see that for what it just might be. So maybe we need to do regular check ins, have deeper conversations, and sometimes renegotiation what exclusivity means inside of our relationship. For one couple, it might be total transparency online. For another, it might mean letting go of monitoring entirely. There's no single right answer here, but there has to be an answer you both agree on. Exclusivity in public space is messy because it puts private comments on display against a backdrop of infinite options. Now, the solution isn't to pretend those triggers don't exist. It's also, it's to face them head on, to acknowledge that the attention feels more fragile now, and to decide together how you'll protect your bond in a world built on comparison. Now, I have some practical responses here, all right, that I that can help you consider some of these moves, right? And because I often get this question, what do I actually do when this thing hits? And I think that's a really good question because knowing the difference between jealousy and envy is only useful if it changes how you handle the moment. So the first step is a self check in. What you feel, that knot in your stomach or the thoughts that start racing, pause and ask a simple question. Am I scared of losing what I already have, or am I aching for something I don't? That pause breaks the automatic spiral. If it's jealousy, That's about the fear of loss. If it's envy, it's about longing for what you feel you're missing. Just naming one is, you know, whatever's at play keeps you from lumping them both together and reacting blindly. Now, the second step is direct communication. If what you're feeling is jealousy, the answer usually lives inside of the relationship. That might mean telling your partner, hey, when I saw that, it stirred something inside of me and I felt a little bit unsure. But you got to notice the difference. We're not accusing, you're just saying, you know, this is how I'm feeling. What you don't want to do is, hey, you disrespected me, you're betraying me. When you tell them that you're feeling unsettled, you're saying, here's what happened inside of me. That keeps the door open for understanding instead of this turning into some big blown out fight. Now, the third step is about boundaries, and I talk about boundaries quite often. Every couple has to define what feels comfortable in the digital space. Now, for some, liking photos is harmless, for others, it cuts deeper. What matters is that you talk about it and set expectations you both agree on. Boundaries aren't about control, they're about clarity. They help take the guesswork out of what's okay and what's not okay. That way, you're not left trying to decode your partner's every move, right? I have boundaries. I have boundaries in my practice, and I enforce them quite often. If you set up an appointment, you're not here. We do all of these things. We create boundaries because they're guidelines for how we need to live our life. Don't look at them as some way that you're boxing yourself in, because that's not what boundaries are. Okay. Pardon me. Now, then the final part here is there's self-reflection. This is where envy comes in. If what you're feeling is more about comparison, I wish I looked like that, or I had that confidence, whatever the case may be, then the work isn't your partner or with them, actually. It's with yourself. Envy is the clue pointing to something you want but don't yet have. And maybe it's more self-assurance, confidence, taking better care of yourself, going and finishing off your education, whatever the case may be. Maybe it's about stepping into your own ambitions. Envy stings because it highlights the gap. The most powerful thing you can do is take one small step forward, towards closing that gap instead of just sitting in the ache. And here's the bigger truth. None of us can stop these feelings from showing up. Jealousy and envy are part of the human condition. The goal isn't to erase them, it's to respond to each one wisely. That means slowing them down, naming them clearly, speaking honestly, and being willing to look at yourself as much as you're looking at your partner. If you can do these things, if you can check in, if you can communicate, if you can set boundaries and you can reflect, you're going to find that that sting doesn't control you in the way it once did. It becomes a signal instead of a spiral. And that shift is where relationships grow stronger instead of being chipped away by doubt. Now, all of this is fine and good, but the bigger lingering question here is, hey, Chris, how does this affect our kink and power dynamics? Well, good. Let's talk about that, how it shows up in the lifestyle, especially in DS or even MS dynamics, because the stakes often feel higher there. Now, exclusivity, attention, and validation carry a particular charge when power exchange is involved. In a DS relationship, exclusivity isn't just about romance, it's about a role. A submissive might fear being replaced not only as a partner, but as the submissive, the one trusted to serve, the one allowed to kneel, the one given access to that side of their partner. That makes jealousy feel sharper, right? It's not just, will you leave me? It's, will you strip away this identity that only exists with you? Or for a slave in an MS dynamic, that fear of being replaced can feel like the ground opening up beneath them. On the other side of envy, on the other side, when envy shows up, it shows up in a lot of different ways. A submissive might envy another person's grace, their obedience, their endurance in a submissive, right? A dominant may envy another's charisma, another dominant skill, or their ability to hold attention in a room or teach a class or tie a tie or conduct a scene. These aren't casual comparisons. They cut right to the core of how people see themselves in their roles. And in the lifestyle, our roles aren't just hobbies. They're woven into our identity. So when envy hits, it feels like a direct challenge to who you are allowed to be. And this is why honesty matters so much. In power exchange, it can be tempting to bury these feelings out of shame. A submissive might think, if I admit I'm jealous, I'm going to look insecure or needy, right? A dominant might think, if I admit I'm envious, I'll look weak or unworthy of authority. But hiding these feelings is actually what corrodes the dynamic. Power exchange relies on trust, and trust is built on truth. When you can name jealousy or envy out loud, you're not tearing down the structure, you're preserving it. Take jealousy. If you can say, I felt scared of being replaced when you interacted with that person, it gives your partner the chance to steady you, to reaffirm the bond, and to make clear that the role you hold is not in danger. Now, if you swallow that fear, it doesn't disappear. It leaks out in subtle resistance. You might withdraw, or you might start testing behavior. That does far more damage than the awkwardness of speaking plainly. And with envy, admitting it opens the door to growth. If the submissive says, I envy, how effortlessly that other person kneels, how composed they look. A dominant can respond not with judgment, but with guidance. Well, let's work on that together. Then envy becomes a path towards skill and discipline, or even a deeper embodiment of the role rather than this quiet poison that eats away at someone's confidence. And here's the larger point. Jealousy and envy in kink aren't signs that the dynamic is broken. They're signs that it's still alive. They're reminders of what matters most. The roles are bonds, the identity, and the validation. When those feelings are met with openness instead of denial, they strengthen the connection. They affirm that both parties, partners, or anybody else, however you define yourself inside of the roles, are human first, role bearers second, and that humanity has a place inside of the dynamic. So don't mistake honesty for weakness. In a DS or MS relationship, saying, I felt jealous or I envied that is one of the bravest things you can actually do. It doesn't undermine your role, it grounds it in reality. And when you bring these truths into the open, you're not just preserving the structure, you're proving that the dynamic is strong enough to hold all of you, even the parts that sting. Now, as I wind this down today, I want to bring this back to something simple. Jealousy and envy are not flaws. They're proof that you're not broken or that the relationship is doomed. They're signals. Jealousy signals the fear of losing what you already hold. Envy signals the longing for something you don't have. And when you can name that clearly before you react, you stop letting the sting dictate the story. Think of them as less shameful and more as messengers. They're telling you what matters, where you're vulnerable, and what deserves your attention. The digital age hasn't created these struggles, it's just amplified them, it's magnified them. A like or a follow can feel huge, but at the root, it's the same timeless struggle beings have always had, wanting to feel secure, wanting to feel chosen, and wanting to know we are enough. So I'm going to leave you with my question to sit with, as I always do. What story do you tell yourself when this sting hits? And how would your relationship change if you slowed down and asked whether the story is actually true? That's where the work really begins, not eliminating feelings, but in noticing the story that's you've attached to them. So, first, as I always want to do, and my good friend always reminds me, I'm going to promote my book. Not the greatest book out there, but it's got some direction. It's quite inexpensive. Tangled Desires, the intersection between psychology and BDSM. I'm warning you now, it's a bit repetitive. It's got a lot of, I don't know, I think it's got about 90 references in there. All right. It's a little less, it's a little bit more formal, Chris, than it was conversational, Chris, than I am now. All right. But I wrote it a long time ago. First book. If you get it, you've been warned. Right. I only want to see like 5-star reviews, even if you say, my God, he told me and he was right. It's repetitive. Thank you, Chris. You're very welcome. You were warned. Right. But some people have bought it. Makes me an author. I don't know. I'm kind of still in awe on that one. I have spoken to Hi There Catsuit. He's currently on vacation. I believe he went to Europe. We will have him in an upcoming show, I promise. Yes, I am still working on the worksheet. I think it'll be number 7 or 8 that I'm releasing to the community. It's coming. I'm just busy. I'm very busy with work. A lot of stuff happening, right? Um, Now, every week, except last week, but the past few weeks, I've been doing a new segment on my show called You're Famous Now. I take all the criticisms that I get, all the nasty comments for the most part, and well, I change their screen names because I'm going to protect their anonymity. But most of the time, I end up deleting or blocking these people. Some of these comments actually don't make sense to me. Some I couldn't even read or understand. One came from, we're just going to dive right in, Chi-Town, Philly, which it's funny. I'm going to guess they're also they're from Chicago, but they maybe live in Philly, or they're from Philly and live in Chicago. I don't really know. Um, None of my words make no sense. Uh, Something about don't know lifestyle, act like I don't really understand, but then they basically told me to go fuck myself. That was really quite interesting. That was clear. What they gave me 3 middle finger emojis, right? We don't even really communicate anymore, which is kind of funny. We're talking about the digital age today, and this is communication. It's like we're doing hieroglyphics now. We're literally going back 2,000 years when we spoke in pictographs, right? Um, okay, this next one was interesting. We're just going to label her the down under queen, right? Uh, she had commented on my writing on jealousy and envy and saying that um, they are not part of the human condition, and psychology doesn't state that. Well, they are. You are wrong, which is what I said. Then they told me I'm pompous, arrogant fool who can't read the definition of words, nor do I know where they come from. I'm stupid, and why don't I throw myself off of a bridge? Don't know how that escalated so quickly, but my God, they must be fun at parties, right? For all of you down in the Sydney area, this type of person must be really good. I'm going to assume this is like the. I should actually change this person's name instead of Down Under. I think I should just call her the Sydney Karen, right? She's like just likes to dictate to stuff. Uh, last two are from a couple of Europeans. They seemed to start off nice. They were just like they were complimenting something I'd written a meme, but then asked me when they had if they donate to my show or don't just donate in general to support what I do because I write a lot. Obviously, does that mean that they get to dictate what I'm going to say? And I politely responded. I said no. It just helps me keep doing these things because these things cost me time and money. And so then they said that was a stupid policy that uh, I should be doing all of this work for free, and I owe it to the community that's giving me something. Now, these people were like less than 25. So when they say community, I'm sorry. I've been longer. I've been in the community longer than these people been alive. Okay. I don't call me a gatekeeper and I'm fine with that. But start telling me I owe you something just because I do this for a living, we're going to have problems. So I'm sorry, little Panchito and Pepe or Miguel, or I can't even remember what your name was. I think one was from Italy and the other was from Portugal. I'm really sorry to tell you both that it's not going to happen. All right. You don't have to donate. You can keep listening for free. You can keep reading for free. You can keep commenting. And I'm still going to respond to you. But I don't owe you anything. Right? The world owes you nothing. I've worked hard. You work hard. Right? I know it's a really challenging concept in the modern age, but it is what it is. So you're famous now. These are the things that I deal with week in and week out, right? This particular week wasn't too bad. Sydney Karen was a little bit, being a Sydney Karen, but hey, whatever. It is what it is. So let me know what you thought about today. Let's keep the conversation. There's a reason why when I start talking about a subject and I get a little repetitive, if it starts in my AMAs and then I do a writing and then come on and do a show about it, it's important. It shows up in our lives and it affects a lot of us. And I really appreciate the person who emailed me about this and asked me if I would do kind of another follow up on it. I was happy to. I think I was already kind of slating to do something like this. But let me know what your thoughts are. I'll put the question up on socials. You can keep the conversation going there. Until next time, everybody, be safe and stay kinky.